Good afternoon and welcome to our regular council meeting for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. I'll call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. First item on the agenda, under agenda item 1.1, Land Acknowledgement. The town of Coaldale acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot peoples of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot peoples past, present, and future, while recognizing their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The town of Coaldale is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Agenda item 1.2, Conflict of Interest Declaration, Pecuniary and Non-pecuniary. Are there any in the room this afternoon? None declared, thank you. Moving on to acceptance of the agenda. Agenda item 2.1 for the regular council meeting for April 2nd, 2024. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? See none, could I get someone to make a motion that council adopt the regular council meeting agenda for April 2nd, 2024 as presented? Councillor Reese. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to adoption of the previous minutes. Regular council meeting minutes from March the 11th, 2024. Were there any errors or omissions in the minutes? See none, could I get someone to make a motion that council adopt the regular council meeting minutes from March the 11th, 2024 as presented? Councillor Pickering, any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Coming up at 5:05, we have a public hearing. So I'll invite Cameron Mills, our Director of Growth and Investment and Deputy CAO, to get himself comfortable. While we are waiting, we shall move ahead to agenda item 12.1 under information items. We have a letter from Avail. That's the company that's doing our financial audit. Is there any questions regarding that letter? And that letter is based on the fact that they were retained to complete the audit for 2023 for the town of Coaldale. Councillor Chapman?
The motion to receive for information.
Thank you. Any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And then under information items 12.2, we have the minutes from the Citizens on Patrol meeting from January the 17th, 2024. Was there any questions regarding those minutes?
I'll move those minutes as circulated.
Thank you. Any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 12.3, we have the March and April newsletter and calendar from the Coaldale Public Library. Are there any questions or comments on that information item? See none, would Councillor Beekman like to make a motion that Council receive the Coaldale Public Library newsletter and calendar as information? Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 12.4, the minutes from the Coaldale and Chamber of Commerce meeting of February the 7th, 2024. Any questions or comments on that piece of information? Can I get someone to make a motion to adopt the Coaldale Chamber of Commerce meeting minutes from February 7th as information? Councillor Saylor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And then under information item 12.5, we have the meeting minutes from the Coaldale Library Board that took place on February 13th, 2024. Are there any questions or comments for that? See none, could I get someone to make a motion that council receive the Coaldale Library Board meeting minutes from February 13th, 2024 as information? Councillor Beekman, thank you. Any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. And the last one under agenda item 12.6, the link pathway update. That was a PowerPoint presentation slide deck that was sent out. Any questions or comments on that one? Seeing none, could I get someone to make a motion that council receive the link pathway update as information? Councillor Reese. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Backing up to public hearing, agenda item 5.1. I'll call the public hearing to order at 5:06 p.m. And the intent of this public hearing is regarding agenda item 5.1, Land Use Bylaw Amendment 886-P-02-24, regarding rezoning from urban reserve zoning to highway commercial C2 and residential multi-unit R2 zoning, and as well a utility corridor. So my name is Jack Van Rijn. I will be chairing this public hearing. All questions and comments shall be directed through myself. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider the land use bylaw amendment, and the public hearing procedures are as follows. Council is here to listen to the information presented and make a decision on the matter that is the subject of this hearing. This is a formal hearing and is not a debate. Everyone wishing to speak who has pre-registered will be given an opportunity to speak once to the matter as called upon myself as the chair. Each presenter must state his or her full name, their address, and their interest in this matter, including whether they are in support or non-support. Individuals who do not identify themselves will not be given an opportunity to speak. Presenters are to stay within a suggested 5-minute time limit on the presentation and are encouraged when speaking to keep the presentation to the point and refrain from restating points raised by previous speakers if possible. If new presentation materials are provided, you may be required to email a copy to our municipal clerk. So at this time, I would ask our Director of Growth and Investment and our Deputy CAO, Cameron Mills, to introduce the subject matter of this public hearing.
Thank you very much, Mayor Van Rijn. So I've prepared a bit of a presentation to provide an outline for what we're discussing here at the public hearing. So this is with respect to Bylaw 886-P-0224, which is with respect to the rezoning of a piece of land in East Coaldale, so east of the RCMP station, for rezoning largely from urban reserve to a highway commercial zoning as well as a residential R2 or multifamily zoning. Just to provide some overview, within the planning context and the documents that guide this type of decision making, we have the municipal development plan or the town plan, which provides sort of an overarching guide to the town's long-term growth. And then at a more specific level, we have the area structure plan process, which we've been through a few of the area structure plan adoptions over the last couple of years. There is an area structure plan that is in place for this area, which is the Parkside Acres area structure plan. And then more specific to that, we have the land use bylaw. So ultimately, rezoning bylaw is something that amends the land use bylaw to apply a different zoning within that bylaw towards a specific parcel of land. So just taking a look at the municipal development plan, this is a long-range plan that's adopted by council to ensure a consistent and coordinated approach to decision making. It provides a number of tools, in particular the community's vision and goals, and outlines the policies and strategies that guide future development. It also identifies areas for growth, new growth, as well as infill development. Just taking a look at a map from the town plans, the area highlighted here. My laser pointing skills are not excellent, but just notice on the east end of town, just for anyone who might be watching, and what that shows there, and it's a little bit, the text is a little bit hard to see, but the red area that's identified is identified as a future commercial node, and then the orange area outlined shows a future residential node, and that is in line with what is being proposed. More specifically, we can take a look at the Parkside Acres Area Structure Plan. Again, this is a document that was outlined or that was adopted by council, went through a rigorous public engagement process. A number of significant amount of planning went into this, and it shows here the area in question. Again, we're seeing that the area on the right that's shown in pink to the north, identified as an area showing for highway commercial development, so that's in line with the rezoning application. And then to the south of that, the area shown in white with the hashed X marks are for potential low density or high density multifamily residential development. What we've had since that time, so an area structure plan shows, for example, this shows a road network that is not exactly in line with what is ultimately constructed. So as you recall, road networks are not designed within the area structure plans to be sort of exact representations of the road. So in this case, this shows a road network extending to the north with cul-de-sacs to the east. What was ultimately constructed is a straight north-south road a little bit further to the east. And what we already have in this area where the X's are marked is an existing multifamily residential proposal, which is a series of I believe triplexes and fourplexes for sort of a 55+ community backing onto the lake, which I understand is going quite well. So this, from the administration's perspective, this is all what's there now is in line with the area structure plan, and what's being proposed is also very much in line and follows the same spirit with respect to what is currently in place. So the proposed bylaw, again, shows here. So when we talk about, what we're talking about is fundamentally a change from an urban reserve to a highway commercial C2 and residential multi-unit R2 zoning change. There is noted in the staff report provided also a change from a utility U zoning to a highway commercial zoning. So there is a sliver of land that has been provided to the town by the developer at the time of initial subdivision that provides for fundamentally a drainage corridor between what at the time was two lots, both serving a highway commercial purpose. The proposal is to combine those for a single sort of commercial node, which from an administration's perspective is perfectly reasonable. The existence of the drainage corridor being on town-owned land doesn't really serve any purpose in and of itself, provided that the developer can provide some sort of alternative to accommodate that sort of drainage or utility corridor. That can be done just as easily through an easement from the town's perspective. But that isn't included in the rezoning proposal. The occurrence of the rezoning doesn't create the transfer of land, just to be perfectly clear. That's currently owned by the town, will continue to be owned by the town until such a time as a plan that accommodates the transfer of that land is in place. But rezoning it from the town's perspective has no material impact on the town's operations over the next little while. We did receive first reading of this bylaw last month at the previous council meeting in March. Notice of the proposed bylaw and public hearing was circulated to all surrounding property owners and was posted on the town's engagement platform, Civicate. We received no submissions from any notified parties. And council, upon conclusion of the public hearing, will have an opportunity to consider the bylaw after having an opportunity to consult with administration, the developer's representative, the developer and their representative here this evening. So if council has any questions for them, you're certainly welcome to ask. And then following closure of the public hearing, we'll have an opportunity to consider passing potentially second and third reading of the bylaw at that time. That concludes administration's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And maybe you mentioned it, but I didn't hear. Was there any correspondence received for or against?
There was not, no.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to members of council. Are there any questions or concerns to bring up? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and maybe through to Cam, if I may. Was there any need for a traffic impact assessment to that area, especially to the area of 8th Street?
There may be, that wouldn't be part of a rezoning consideration though.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments for our presenter? Any comments from the applicants?
We're just a listening ear here for now.
Okay, thank you. So I will now ask the question if council has sufficient information to make a decision on land use bylaw amendment 886-P-02-24. Thank you. I'll declare the public hearing closed at 5:16 p.m. Moving on to agenda item 7.1 under bylaws and policies. Once again, we're going to be discussing land use bylaw amendment 886-P-02-24 regarding second and third reading regarding the rezoning of urban reserve and urban to C2 and R2. And we just had our Director of Growth and Investment and Deputy CAO, Cameron Mills, present. Are there any further questions or comments pertaining to that presentation? Seeing none, is there any appetite to provide second and third reading of land use bylaw amendment 886-P-02-24? I'm looking for a sponsor for second reading. Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Provide second reading to this land use amendment 886-P-02-24 as presented.
Thank you. Any further discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And moving on to third and final reading of land use bylaw amendment 886-P-02-24 with amendments. Is there anyone that want to sponsor that one? Councillor Beekman, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And as part of that request on my behalf, I mentioned the word amendment, amendments, and that was a misquote. So thank you for that. Cameron, moving on to agenda item 7.2 under bylaws and policies. We have the fire services bylaw amendment 888-R-04-24. And our presenter, Clayton Rutberg, that was supposed to be here, is not able to make it. So we have our Deputy Fire Chief, Byron Fraser, and we have our Manager of Community Policing, Mark Anderson, presenting. So gentlemen, whoever drew the short straw can start whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Today we're bringing to you an amendment to the fire service bylaw. The current bylaws was originally put in place in 1984. So it had been previously discussed with council and administration about updating the bylaw and bringing it to the new age. So we've modernized it and ensure it aligns with current and best practices of the service. Since this time, there's been many changes in legislation with fire services. So we've updated the bylaw to ensure that Coaldale Emergency Services has a proper authority and direction to respond to emergencies and the implementation of mitigation strategies in preventing of emergencies. This bylaw also has some procedural clarity on mutual aid agreements and other types of events that we respond to and requested to attend outside of our jurisdiction. The bylaw is closely related to level of service policy that we will be presenting at a later council meeting. So some key considerations for us in updating the bylaw was just updating the authority for us. Over years, a lot of legislation has changed. There's no financial impact in moving forward with this bylaw today. Administration has engaged with Emergency Services Committee a couple times, which in your package you've seen the changes and stuff we've laid out in that and presented to you. So today we hope that Council may approve the first reading of the Fire Service Bylaw Amendment and possibly second and third readings, or as other direction determined by Council if more information is required. Basically, we're asking you today to read first reading and approve the updated bylaw.
Thank you, Byron. I'll open it up to members of council if there's any questions, concerns. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and through to you folks. I appreciate all the hard work that you've been putting into this update. 40 years since the bylaw has been updated, so I appreciate your effort in that. Just several questions that I might have. First of all, in your definitions, do you need to have the community or Coaldale District Emergency Services as a definition in there? I didn't see it, but is it something that you might need to have?
It's possible if they use it as an acronym. I'll be honest with you guys, I have not been working forefront on this, obviously. Chief Rutberg has been. You know, if it's used as a definition a lot in there and isn't defined in there, possibly that would be a proper amendment.
Okay. Second question, any references in here that you might have authority to or to take place? Do you need to have any references to the Municipal Government Act to reference that authority?
I don't believe so. A lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe we do, as we're set up by you guys giving us authority to perform our duties, and virtually you're creating the law for us. So.
Okay, thank you. My final question, with reference to some of the costs therein, for example, your fees and charges, they would be referenced through the town plan and in some of those references to other fees?
Yes, through the chair. We have a fee service bylaw that's being updated and stuff, so all the fees for our services will be updated in that.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Any further questions from members of council? Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move first reading on this bylaw and then leave it for a couple of weeks till our next council meeting to allow us to provide a little bit more input to the fire chief. There's a couple things. 3I, for instance, you've got fire chief, deputy chief, fire captains, lieutenants, but yet in our manual, we refer to fire training officer. So he's not being appointed. We got senior firefighters, just some small little things that, you know, I can work through Kalen and then he can pass them on to the fire chief. But I would like to make first reading and then wait for next council for second and third.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? There is a motion on the floor by Councillor Avery that council approve the first reading of Fire Services Bylaw 888-R-04-24 as presented. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. While you gentlemen are sitting there, we can jump ahead on the agenda to agenda item 9.1. And that's regarding the Coaldale and District Emergency Services 2023 year-end report. And again, we have Deputy Fire Chief Byron Fraser and our Manager of Community Policing, Mark Anderson presenting. So whenever you gentlemen are ready, go ahead.
Good evening again, Council. Are we bringing it up on? If not, I can just go through. I think you guys all have the annual report in front of you. I'd like to commend Chief Rutberg on the job he did in the annual report. We've had lots of conversation over the time that I've been there about, really giving a document that people can really get into and really understand. So we put a lot of hours into, Chief Rutberg put the most by far, but we put a lot of hours into just fine tuning how it's presented and what the document goes out to the public. So I must commend Chief Rutberg on that. So I'll see you. Okay, so just as a review, 2023 fire services in review. Coaldale District Emergency Services responded to 284 emergencies in our response area and mutual aid areas. We had 369 medical emergencies, 100 motor vehicle collisions, 99 alarm calls, and 68 fires in those responses. 14 motor vehicle collisions where we found nothing. And this is getting more and more prominent. I don't know if you guys have heard the Apple phones have the automatic calling to 911. People are dropping them and we're getting paged to a 911 call and nobody there. So that's becoming more common for us. 9 public assist calls and 7 mutual aid calls where we were stood down before arrival. So our goal within our response area and our partners in the county is to, provide a high quality response with the proper apparatus, and then as apparatus arrive, they then reduce down to the apparatus and people that are needed on that call. I'll encourage you guys as I'm going through just to stop me and ask questions as we go through, because I'll go through it fairly fast. It's quite a in-depth document. So 7 hazmat calls, 5 electrical hazard calls, and 1 drone mutual aid call to assist RCMP. On the next piece there, we have the 5-year call total. So as you'll see, we're in a steady incline. As I get going through the next piece where we talk about medical calls, you'll see our medical calls have been reduced quite a bit, and yet our total calls have gone up significantly over the last year. We break down in this document to give everybody a real good picture of where all these calls take place. So as you guys know, we cover and assist Lethbridge County in providing emergency response to their area, all the way up to the city, and then we provide mutual aid outside of the county plus north of the river to our mutual aid partners within the county. So there's a breakdown of all the number of calls. We broke down to fire service hours on our report. We think that's a pretty big impact statement of numbers, showing how many hours volunteers are, whether they're leaving work or just their free time, to go and assist the public, whether it's in Coaldale or Lethbridge County or wherever we're needed to respond. So we thought that was a pretty important document to have in there. We broke it down for daytime to evening response. Daytime has a great impact on businesses in the community, allowing their workers to respond to emergencies within the community. So we'd like to put a big thank you out to the community for allowing their workers to assist us day to day. Oops. That looks like your slide there.
That one's out of sequence.
Out of sequence, yeah. Okay, we could bump back to that one. I'll finish mine. Oh. I'll see if I can find it. I'll quit pressing buttons here. Anyway, while we're trying to get back on the right page, we did have a kind of an intriguing stat that we thought should be in the document. We had 25 occurrences of overlapping calls in 2023. So we had 25 times where we had more than one call at the same time. So we had to call on other apparatus to come in, or possibly even mutual aid to come in and assist us. In the next couple slides, and they may just not be in that piece, we did talk about the medical response, and I think it was a big piece for us. I talked earlier about reduction in medical calls. We respond with ambulance service to medical first response, and in 2023, 2022, we had quite a high number of what we call code red, so where ambulances are not in town available to respond. And that triggers a lot more for the fire department to respond and be first response for those incidents. So AHS had readapted their model in the community, and because of it, we had quite a reduction in medical first response calls that we had to respond to because of code red responses. Are we getting better there? See if I can go. Anyway, we also broke down just severity of calls and stuff in the document. I'll touch again, sorry, I skipped over. Code red calls in 2022 were 80, and in 2023 they were only 22. So we reduced almost 60 calls for service just in the medical side of it, but we were still quite over on our yearly response. So motor vehicle collisions throughout the year are remaining steady. We do most of ours in the county. With the new county expanded area right up to the city, that propose about 24 more a year as well. In 2023, we responded to multiple fires, 18 structure fires, 12 vehicle fires, 18 grassland fires, 15 controlled burns, and those are ones that people called in that we ended up getting called for to go investigate, and 5 other fires. So fires were fairly steady again through the year. So fire training, we had 2,174 regular training hours in 2023. So that's adding up all the time volunteers are putting in. As you guys know, we train 2 nights a week in order to accommodate all of our firefighters being able to make it. We've had 8 separate opportunities for training in the fire tower between Lethbridge's tower and Tabor's tower, which is a huge asset and training we don't get on a regular basis, which is second to none for our firefighters. We've used 3 acquired structures to conduct training. Acquired structures allow firefighters to participate skills in a realistic environment that is difficult to simulate in a training environment. So again, that type of training for us is second to none. All right, I will hand it over to our municipal enforcement department.
Just before we do that, Byron, I'm just going to open it up to members of council if there's any questions on the fire side of the presentation. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and through to Deputy Chief. Appreciate your report here. To this point, I wanted to ask you about the calls north of the river. I believe you have 21 as registered here. Would those be considered as mutual aid type of calls, or those were direct calls that you responded to north of the river?
They're not automatic. Sorry, through the chair, Councillor Chapman. They're not automatic response at this time. We are trying to get within the region more automatic calls put in place within our county partners. So they would have been requested by us as mutual aid to come assist them, whether it's for grass fires or structure fires. Usually is what it attains to, whether our tender goes or a engine apparatus. So.
Okay. Just a further question here, Deputy Chief. Page 30 in your report, fire training officer on number 11 speaks to wildland firefighting and water supply operations. In that paragraph, he speaks about the training covering forest fire behavior, the use of specialized equipment, and so on. My question to you would be this, and something that I think council's sort of not really grappled with considerably, but water safety, water issues. For example, we've got a number of lakes, canals, rivers close by, and I think with the growing population, I think it's going to be apparent that we may have to start addressing those types of situations. And particular to Stafford Lake as the one close by. But anyway, I was just curious as to how you address sort of forest fire training, but eventually we may need to look at water safety training.
Yes, absolutely agree. We've had multiple conversations on that. As for forest fire and even just grassland fire training, a lot of it is similar firefighting. We train to provincial standards in order, like last year, we had crews get deployed to go up north and assist in the fires that happen around the province. But we do get a lot of grass fire and stuff around here, so it's high priority that we keep up with our training and our skills for everyone. And by doing that, a lot of the training overlaps for forest fires and grassland fires.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments for our presenters? Just before you pass it on to Mark, quick question on the ladder truck. Does that automatically get responded to any structure fire in the town or the county?
In our response area, it does because it's from our station. Automatic, no. It does in the sense that we've talked with a lot of fire chiefs in the county and they automatically request it as soon as a structure fire comes into play. We are working with dispatch and we've been for the last little bit of turning it into an automatic response as it's so valuable for structure fires and even haystack fires. We've found it second to none in fire response. So we're working on the automatic aid piece of it, but it is being requested quite frequently compared to years previous.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions, I'll pass it on to Mark. Oh, sorry, Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a follow up to that, Deputy Chief. So if it's responding out into the county, who gets the revenue from that call? Because the town is going to be ultimately the ones that have to replace that piece of apparatus at a couple $1 million. And so is that a county, when it responds in the county, they get the revenue from our piece of equipment?
Councillor Avery through the chair. Yes, you're correct. The county bills and receives all revenue for anything outside the town of Coaldale that we respond to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mark, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. 2023 was an interesting year for us. We had a number of significant events going on throughout the year. We operated most of the year with only one CPO1 in place while we were waiting to hire a new second officer. And at the same time, we still had record call volumes and a number of new achievements that were goals that we've had since relaunching the municipal enforcement program several years ago. One of our significant accomplishments in the past year was the Bylaw internship program, excuse me, which was championed by CPO Devin Nielsen. It was an initiative that he developed and came up with and worked with the college in Lethbridge to develop the program. And ultimately, we were able to hire 2 bylaw interns, and one of our interns on completing his 4-month internship was hired directly into the Lacombe Police Service. So our program into theirs. Officer Nielsen's work has now been adopted by several other agencies around the province, and he's working to assist them with their setting up their training programs for their bylaw interns as well. Also in 2023, while still down staff members, we Again, Officer Nielsen relaunched the bike rodeo program after a 3-year hiatus due to COVID. It was done in partnership with not just Coaldale, but with Coaldale Emergency Services, Alberta Health Services, Ridge Regional Protective Services, Tabor Police, RCMP, Claresholm Municipal Enforcement, and community volunteers. And a little over 800 youth from elementary schools were able to come through the bike rodeo program here in Coaldale. And it was a resounding success. Also in 2023, we transitioned from our previous records management system to a new management system, which incorporates not only our day-to-day reporting, but also our automated traffic enforcement and our traditional enforcement programs, so that everything is in a unified system. And Coaldale was also one of 2 jurisdictions in Alberta which was able to develop and successfully launched a completely electronic disclosure process for the court system. And so it's for a small town, a very large accomplishment, having worked with our providers for that. We're looking forward in 2024 to continue making progress on all of those initiatives, and having brought on our latest CPO, Constable Steinfeld, or Officer Steinfeld, we're already seeing an increase in our presence in the community and traffic enforcement and community events, and things are moving along quite nicely, and I look forward to great things in 2024. On the next page, I just give you a breakdown of our complaint cases and types. I won't go through all of them line by line, but the largest ones for us still tend to be community standards bylaws, which involve unsightly properties, few other things, but primarily unsightly properties, dog control, and now the Traffic Safety Act. So that would be actual traffic safety initiatives within the community. At the end of 2023, we only had 3 unsolved cases and 3 that were still under investigation. The rest of our incidents of all 542 were concluded, which was really nice to see. We ended the year very well. Throughout the year, our largest call volumes come in January, May, June, November, and December. July and August are pretty close. They tend to be a lot of our community standards events come in those months. What I'm very happy to see within 2023 is the vast majority of our calls are officer observed. So it's our officers out in the field making observations and taking action on them, significantly more than the complaints that people actually call in for service on. We do have some online reporting, although it's certainly not a large part of how we get calls for service. And as always, we always appreciate when council passes information along to us for calls. I did mention the internship already. Say Officer Nielsen made that a huge success for us. Moving forward to our traffic safety. So throughout 2023, our enforcement team increased our presence on Highway 845 significantly and on Highway 3, conducting a couple of blitzes for pedestrian safety, trucks, Jake brakes, and responding to some of the requests from our community to try and keep those events under control. Our school resource officer program, Officer Nielsen conducted numerous safety lectures with our schools, including driver and safety information class at Kate Andrews High School. And now in 2024, our 2 officers are actually going to be splitting duties so we can actually pay even closer attention to the schools and provide better service for them. In 2023, our traditional enforcement, we worked in 13 different areas of the town. 97 tickets were issued. The fine information is in the report for you. You can have a look at that. And at the end of the year, CPOs organized again our annual candy cane check stop, and Santa was able to give our RCMP staff sergeant a quick hug before heading off for his evening duties. Then we come to automated traffic enforcement, or as most people call it, photo radar. Our actual traffic volume was down about 13.4% over what it was in 2022. A slight increase in violations, but the actual speeds that vehicles were passing through town had decreased. So it's a positive outcome for us that the average speeds over the whole town have decreased into 30 zones, 50s, and 70s, which means we're having less speeders. We had greater number of hours that our vehicle was deployed last year over the year previous, which accounts for why we have a few more tickets. As always, our automated enforcement program is not simply deploying the photo radar system. We continue to participate with our development team, with our engineers, and we research all of the zones, not just the existing ones, but the ones that are coming downstream with new developments coming on. So we participate in research, education, engineering designs, and also enforcement then becomes the last tool in the toolbox. There's a complete breakdown for all of our photo radar sites that can show you where we were, how long we were at each site, and what kind of enforcement numbers there were, including speeds and volumes, which I'll let you have a look at your leisure. As required by the province of Alberta, we do need to disclose what types of fine revenue or how much our fine revenue was generated from automated enforcement every year. And for 2023, the average violation ticket was $164.93 for an automated enforcement ticket. The gross revenue would have been $1,145,109. However, there's a number of items that come out of that before the town ever sees it, and that would be the victim fine surcharge, the province of Alberta's fees, what we routinely can perceive as uncollectibles or what we routinely know as uncollectibles. We had anticipated that we would see a revenue of about $485,000 returned to the town through our automated enforcement program. In actual fact, we received $592,307, but that also includes all of our traditional enforcement revenues from not just municipal enforcement, but also the RCMP or any other enforcement agency who is operating within the town of Coaldale, for example, the sheriff's office. But when we weigh that against the expenditures to actually operate municipal enforcement, the photo radar program, and taking into account the amount of funding that the town of Coaldale actually puts into traffic improvements and traffic safety within our community, it's actually, we're about $127,000 below what revenues are generated. So we're spending more on traffic safety than we're actually taking in all of our revenues, which is commendable. And thank you. Our collision numbers for 2023 were relatively unchanged, with total collisions at 91 this year over 87 last year. The one thing that I did note was the number of injury collisions was higher this year than it was last year. And we're doing a review of some of the data to see if there's anything we can determine in there as to why that would be. There is a map attached to the report to show you where our photo radar locations are. And as in previous years, there is a moratorium on in the province. So we are unable to use the photo radar at any locations other than those that had already been established and in place at 2019. So unfortunately, we were not able to address some of our community's concerns by using the photo radar in other locations. Thank you. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mark. A quick question for you. Can you speak a little bit about, put your other hat on, your dog catcher hat, and talk about the increase on stray dogs that we have in our municipality, and speak a little bit about the need for the Pet and Animal Wellness Society that we have now.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. In 2023, we had roughly 14 of our dog complaints were for abandoned dogs we had just been dumped here that we didn't know who they belonged to. We had that many between January and now in 2024. It really is a prevalent problem for us. The humane societies all around us, the different facilities are full. We've reached out as far as Cochrane. We've reached out to British Columbia to try and find places for dogs from Coaldale, and they just aren't there. People can't take them. The Pet and Animal Wellness Society came together as a committee last year, as a committee of council. They're now a society, and they're working very hard to come on board with a humane society or a humane facility of some type here in Coaldale which we're examining ways that we could help them with from municipal enforcement side of things. It's in the early stages, but it's really hopeful.
And just to refresh everybody's memory and our viewers at home, if you pick up a stray dog, can you explain the procedures with that animal?
If a citizen picks up a stray dog, by all means, they can reach out to municipal enforcement through our phone number here. If it's on the weekends, my cell phone number is publicly available on almost any of the websites, or feel free to reach out to me. And if it's an urgent need, we'll bring somebody in to look after that dog. Just as a recent example, we had a lady who found 6 pups who'd been abandoned just at the south border of town. And we actually helped her and worked with her she took in all 6 pups into her residence and kept them for us while we found homes. So that we come up with unique solutions to each problem as it comes up. But by all means, please reach out to us. Either we're available on Facebook, we're available through the town website, email, or phone, or my cell phone.
Thank you. I'll open it up to members of council. Any questions, comments for either of our presenters? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mark, for your presentation here. Just a couple of questions. In your verbal comments, you had mentioned that certain areas of the community were not allowed to, by policy or legislation now, to set up a photo radar. But with the number of complaints that you're speaking to in those areas of town where we're not allowed to, are you still able to manually monitor for speed?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Our CPOs and RCMP officers are allowed to conduct traditional enforcement activities in those locations, but we cannot use the photo radar even as a warning tool or any other kind of tool in those locations, according to the provincial moratorium.
All right, thank you. And my final question, of course, we hear it about quite often, and that is 845 by John Davidson. Are you still hearing anything on that? I know that that's the number 2 most monitored stretch of road that you monitor in Coaldale.
Thank you. If I may seek a little bit of clarification on the question, do you mean, am I getting any more complaints about us being there or not being there?
Well, I think it's obviously the concerns are obviously about the speed limit as opposed to monitoring. So that's really where those questions are coming from.
Okay. I have not had any questions regarding the speed limit in that zone this particular year.
Thank you. And just one final thing here. I really appreciated your average speed of monitored vehicles. It looks on average that everybody, in this on these charts are abiding by the speed quite appropriately, I think within 1 or 2 kilometers. So it's really good news.
It is good news. Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Back to the photo radar. You have a percentage of how many of those citations are from out of town. Do you have that number?
I don't have the exact number off my head, but I can tell you that it's well in excess of 70% are from outside of Coaldale.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions, thank you to both of you for your excellent presentation, and pass on regards to Clayton for his hard work on putting this all together with your staff, and also pass on not only to your full-time staff, but also your volunteers. We appreciate all you do. Byron, did you have one closing comment?
Sorry, Mayor. Yes, please. I just wanted to touch on our emergency management piece too. I didn't talk about it earlier. It's a crucial piece of our emergency services. As you know, Chief Rutberg is very into emergency management and does a great job for the town of Coaldale and previously Lethbridge County. So we just want to touch base. We have 5 members of our team that are part of the South Zonal Hazards Incident Management team and did get deployed to the wildfires last year. So I want to put a big thanks out to the members of those of that team as they may get redeployed again this year. And Clayton want to ask me just touch on Disasters Corner that we put on every year, where various emergency response agencies get together and kind of put a public educational piece together, and we'll be doing it in the next little bit. So just wanted to touch on those things before we go. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, comments, could I get someone to make a motion that council receive the Coaldale District Emergency Services 2023 annual report for information? Councillor Pickering makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Backing up on the agenda to new business, agenda item 8.1, the Rehoboth Annual 2024 Golf Tournament, a request for sponsorship. And our municipal clerk, Lana Anthony, is going to bring us up to speed on that request.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. The organizers of the Rehoboth Golf Tournament are busy organizing their event, and they have made plans for it again this summer, and they are requesting participation and or support, financial support from council for that event. This is their 29th annual golf tournament, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have on the matter.
Can you just go through the options for the different levels of sponsorship on that?
Absolutely. There were 3 options. If council so chooses to participate as a silver sponsor and enter a team of 4 players at a cost of $1,175, or that council approve participation as a silver sponsor at a cost of $500, which includes 1 player registration, or if council so chooses to decline the invitation to participate at all.
Thank you. And if council chooses to move forward with one of these options, the funding for this event will come out of our promotional fund. So I'll open it up for any questions regarding this annual request. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just don't remember exactly what we did last year. It seems almost unfair that we sponsor either 1 or 4. You know, there isn't a middle one, but it's good that we have that representation there for sure. So I don't remember what we had last year. The most is okay. The 1,000.
We sponsored 4 golfers.
Okay. I'd make a motion to sponsor the 4 players at a cost of $1,175.
Thank
for
you.
the silver sponsorship.
There's a motion on the floor by Councillor Chapman. Councillor Avery has a question.
Yes, thank you. And this one would probably be for our CFO. What were we over budget last year on our council budget for doing these type of events?
The total council promotion account last year, we were over budget $2,500 and $5,000, but the large reason that was over budget was for the grand opening of Civic Square was included in that. So traditionally, this account is usually under budget or close to budget. So without that one exceptional item last year, we're usually fairly on track. So this isn't a unique item. This one is consistent from year to year, so it's not a fluctuation of historical trends.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman has a follow-up comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We're through to our CFO, and I see that Russ Tanner's here as well. So just on that note, from a promotional point of view, last year we did the grand opening of Civic Square. This year we're going to be hosting a couple of events, but particularly the grand opening of the rec facility. Could you explain as to how much this was going to cost the town from the promotional side? And I don't know if that would affect this or my motion otherwise, but
Yeah, we don't have any of that information on the rec center grand opening available to share, as we don't have that prepared at this moment.
So it might come out of other funds then, is what you
Community
might be thinking?
services does have various funds that
Mm.
for planned events that they have funding for, as well as the rec center operating account does have a budget for the year. So where that comes, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to answer that question at the moment, but it'll be from one of those two likely.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kyle.
Kyle, you may as well stay there because you're up next. So there's a motion on the floor by Councillor Chapman to approve participation in the Rehoboth Golf Classic as a silver sponsor and enter a team of 4 players at a cost of $1,175. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8.2 under new business regarding the 2022 annual report regarding the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting. We have our Chief Financial Officer and Deputy CAO, Kyle Beauchamp, presenting. So Kyle, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks and good evening, Council. So I do have a bit of an information update. So every year, for the past number of years, corporate services, we do submit our annual report, which contains our audited financial statements along with the various other statistical information. We do submit it to our financial body, the Government Finance Officers Association, for their Canadian Award. So this organization is an international organization from, I say international, essentially North America, United States, and Canada. So this is the 5th year in a row we've received the award, dating back to 2018. And it's one that we're quite proud of that we receive every year. For those who are interested in it, we do publish the annual report on our website, coaldale.ca/annual report. For those looking for more layman's terms financial information, there is quite a good debrief there that goes through the financial statements and breaks it down into a little bit more readable data for those non-accountants. And that is all I have. We plan on working with our communications team after this, kind of on a press release to get the good news out to the public as well. Be happy to address any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of council for our presenter? Congratulations, Kyle. Make sure you pass that on to your team. If there's no questions, could I get someone to sponsor a motion that council accept the 2022 annual report for Canadian Award for Financial Reporting for information? Councillor Avery makes that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Kyle. Moving on to agenda item 9.2 regarding the new Recreation Center project update, report, and grand opening discussion. We have our Director of Recreation and Community Services, Russ Tanner, presenting. Russ, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Van Rijn and fellow council members. So just wait for it to come up here. All right. So the purpose of this report is to update council from a high level on a number of things, but the construction and the progress of the Recreation Center, the move-in plans, the substantial completion first of all, and then the move-in plans and the grand opening ceremonies. Further, to recommend a plan for opening up the facility with council for your feedback. So construction progress update. Construction is on course to have a completion date, and aside from testing of the integrated system testing and monitoring systems as of May 1st, 2024. And so recent work completed includes the following: installation of the soccer dasher boards. So since council's been there last time, this would be the difference that you would see, would be that there's the installation of the soccer dasher board structure itself, installation of wall-mounted score clocks, and installation of basketball hoops. Floor prep for installation. In fact, actually, as of today, the track has been poured. It still needs some painting to be done to it, but they're starting to actually put the plastic flooring in place on the basketball, volleyball, badminton, pickleball courts. So the multi-purpose flooring as we speak. And then continuation of drywall painting and mechanical systems and so forth. So what we're anticipating to happen, continuing right now in the near future over the next month, would be the flooring, completion of the soccer dasher board, so the glass structure that will go in. Completion of the framing and sheeting and painting of the entire facility, and electrical and plumbing and infrastructure type things. Also, there's quite a bit of mill work that's going in there, as you can imagine. So substantial completion dates. So although the major components of the building and construction project are still on course to be completed by May 1st, there still need to have integrated systems, so IST, completed prior to full occupancy to be awarded. This work will be happening through May, ahead of June. So while it is anticipated the building will be ready for the town of Coaldale staff to start moving in the first part of May, they will continue doing those integrated systems and testing for fire suppression and so forth. The timing of the testing and commissioning is not yet known, but as we get closer, we're starting to anticipate and feel more confident that the 1st of June is the date. So move-in plans, considering the information shared in Section 2, Town Administration plans to complete the following tasks in May. So there's a number of things that we still have to do as well, the things that we kept outside of the construction contract so that we weren't paying a construction fee on top of a number of cash allowances and things like that. Some of this we are working with the contractor to start a little bit ahead of time, but these are the items. Installation of the indoor play structure. That will actually start the last week of April so that it's actually done in completion prior to June. The setup of the office furniture and equipment, things like that, that'll be okay, and certainly the timeline in May is more than adequate. Installation of the gym and field house divider curtains. Again, we went with the same contractor that's also pouring the flooring and doing a lot of the other sport equipment. So we anticipate that to actually be done and start before the end of April as well. Twisted Still Fitness move-in and its fit-outs, and what we mean by fit-outs is Twisted still plans on doing some framing and some additional tenant improvement work within their own space, and so that'll happen in May as well. General equipment delivery on pretty much the entire facility. It means like the basketballs and volleyballs and the janitorial equipment and things like that. We've scheduled most of that to do it to arrive in May. And then there's the onboarding and training of staff, which is quite a large item. So the grand opening ceremonies. So this is kind of something we wanted to put out there for council as well, and just some ideas, some food for thought, time-wise. With the following key considerations, what we know concerning construction and timelines, systems, testing and adjustments and normal anticipated deficiencies and things like that, we are asking council if we could consider a soft opening in June. Should council approve, administration is planning to open the facility on Monday, June 3rd, 2024 with the following services: spontaneous use of the facility, tentative bookings of the facility. And we say tentative because obviously right now, we do have a number of regular users that will start to use the facility, like soccer associations and football associations. And we even have some club basketball and people like that want to use the facility as soon as possible. But we say tentative because we don't want to do booking contracts that then we can't fulfill. So this would be something that we'd work with them on that tentative portion. Then there's tours of the facility. something that during soft openings is a pretty normal occurrence in facilities like this when they open. And then Twisted Still Fitness being open for business is the plan, obviously allowing them through May to get ready for that. Further, we'd like to discuss a two-stage approach to the grand opening concept with council, given that it's a soft opening. The first being a formal ribbon cutting ceremony in conjunction with Southern Alberta Summer Games. And the second being a larger scale celebration in conjunction with the Palliser School Division and the opening of the school. And why the key considerations for us, things that we think that have kind of arrived us at this recommendation to council would be there will be obviously some minor building deficiencies that we feel we can still work through, and some of those will be worked through in May for sure as we're moving in. But minor systems or operational deficiencies and staff training and then the timeline misses. There may be portions of the facility come online before others. It is a construction project still active. There is quite a structure, a $300,000 structure, indoor playground structure that certainly they say will be 4 weeks in construction, but again, like any situation, they're not on site yet, as of yet, and we just have to anticipate that some of those things may not go as designed. But the grand opening considerations are as follows. We may not be 100% ready for a large-scale celebration in June. We have crowds expected for the Southern Alberta Summer Games, so we've got together as a community services department, and we've discussed other events that are happening around these times, which, as council already knows, like we're preparing for the Southern Alberta Summer Games. The infrastructure will be out there for the Southern Alberta Summer Games on Wednesday. We will have the stage, we'll have bleachers, we'll have other things out there for the grand opening ceremonies that will take place that evening on the Wednesday. What we're suggesting with council is that maybe at noon or so we have a formal ribbon cutting ceremony with all the dignitaries and large players and partners and investors and stuff to be a part of that type of formal ceremony as that first stage approach. And so I mentioned the infrastructure, but the school does not open until September and may want to partner with us. I'd suggest that we could certainly work with them on a larger scale celebration at that time. And I just put this one in there too because council likely had seen the press release that took place on Friday, and we wanted to give you an opportunity that if you have any questions, even on the Southern Alberta Summer Games, that you could provide that in your comments also within this. But there was a press release that went out Friday that provided the community with the events and sports and some more information as to what to expect for the group. So. And that's been attached to your package. All right. So as far as budget goes, and there was a question earlier that kind of, and it goes very well. Kyle answered the question very well, as it is. The capital budget is on pace to be within budget. We, as you're aware, we had a very small contingency, certainly for a project this size, at roughly $260,000. A good chunk of that was used up with the decision to pave the expansion parking lot, and then also early on some structural steel needs. The school actually took on the majority of the structural steel increase costs because they were ahead of us, which helped us in the long run, but there were some structural steel costs. But we've been doing very well between the need for change orders with contingency and the cash allowances. Cash allowances will come in under for sure. So we don't anticipate any need for any further capital funding for this project. We also don't anticipate any need for the operational side of things for grand opening, as Kyle demonstrated, that if we take this approach, that certainly we can work within existing budgets. That is obviously unless council has the appetite to want to do something bigger than what we would plan with school division, and then we could certainly go and look for sponsorship and other things. But we haven't anticipated at this time without a plan to have some to make that request at this time. So obviously, council has a number of decisions to make here. Options, I guess. But the option one, that council approve a soft opening for the facility on June 3rd, 2024, with a ribbon cutting ceremony, planned in conjunction with the Southern Alberta Summer Games, and work with Palliser School Division on a large-scale event coinciding with the opening of their new school. Or obviously, council always has the option, and we'd anticipate that the council would provide administration with further discussion and direction. And our recommendation would obviously be that option one. However, if there are any questions, I'm all yours.
Thank you, Russ. Just
You bet.
before I open it up to council, I have a couple questions.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about the staffing level and what you foresee taking place?
Absolutely, yeah. So in conjunction with efficiencies of existing staffing, we are anticipating hiring 2 more full-time recreation facility operators. Those 2 operators will be cross-trained, and the existing 6 recreation operators will be cross-trained to enable to work at that facility, at the arena, out the outdoor civic square facility, throughout recreation, and during the summertime sports fields. So they'll be cross-trained. So that's 2 full-time recreation operators. Besides that, with nights and weekends, obviously in the building open on a regular basis, we're looking at hiring also additional part-time operators based upon hours and needs of shifts. So an additional 40 hours in a week. We anticipate that hopefully being 2 part-time operators as well brought on to fill the needs of operations side of things. We also anticipate hiring customer service representatives for the front desk. These representatives would be looking at membership registrations, program registrations, facility bookings, spontaneous use of the facility, and so on and so forth. And so that would be a number of part-time employees at this time.
Thank you. And the naming rights to the facility, will that be announced at the grand opening, or how do you see that playing out?
That is a very good question, and one that I'm not on that part of things. That would be our economic development team, our CEO. Sorry, unfortunately, I'm not in those conversations.
Through to the mayor, that is the $500,000 question. We are working with the sponsor on a press release, so we anticipate that there will be a public announcement even before the soft opening in June. We're just finalizing a few details, but we hope to make that information officially public soon.
Thank you. And back to the play structure. So is the town going to have somebody take liability waivers for kids to go use that?
Very good question. The liability and risk with an indoor play structure is no more of a liability or risk or anybody else doing any other activity within the facility. Our insurance already covers that type of activity, and it's in large part why not only us but a number of community recreation facilities go with the type of play structure that we did, where it's a module or with matting throughout and very little to no fall heights.
The reason I asked that question, any one of the ones I take my grandkids to, they all have to do a waiver online in order to use the facility. So,
okay, that's good to know. And they are the structures similar to this structure?
yes.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll dig a little deeper and see why that is. I wonder if in that case the insurance is a little different for a private entity business than it is for a public facility that's already carrying a blanket umbrella liability risk insurance. So
A good comparison would be that facility called Wear 'em Out.
Yes.
And then my last question before I open up to council is the hours of operation. We were asked prior to the last council meeting for people that are utilizing the pathway system, if they're able to go in there and use the washroom facilities any time of day while you're open.
Absolutely. Yeah, the answer to that is yes. The facility itself is such that there will be spontaneous use, obviously, of a number of activities happening in the facility. We'll be using wristbands to identify the people that are able to participate in those. But at the same time, there's a number of programs happening where there will be parents, spectators also needing access. So it is an open public facility for the entire time it's open, and the washrooms are accessible for anybody.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up to members of council. Any questions, comments for Russ? Okay, so with that being said, we have a couple of options. The first one is that council approve option number 1 and direct staff to plan for a soft opening of the facility on June 3rd, 2024, with a ribbon cutting ceremony planned in conjunction with the Southern Alberta Summer Games, and to work with Palliser School Division on an event coinciding with their opening of the new school, and other options directed by council. Anybody wish to sponsor this one or another one? Councillor Chapman.
Moving for option number 1.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Moving on to agenda item 9.3. Again, we have our Director of Recreation and Community Services, Russ Tanner, presenting giving us an update on the water slide project at our pool. Russ, whenever you're ready.
Thank you again for allowing me to take a little bit more of your time and update you on something that I think a lot of people are excited about in the community. And now you can start to see the structure coming up over the building itself. And so I'll just wait for it to come up here. But the purpose of this report is to make sure the council is up to date on where we're at with the water slide. As you're aware, in 2023, this project had included a number of different items within it. The PVC membrane was installed. There was a accessibility ramp that was purchased, and a number of deck furniture, a number of things were purchased to make the space just a little bit more friendly and usable. And I think we accomplished that. Unfortunately, in 2023, the supply of the water slide materials were delayed. And because of that, so that we could use the rest of the pool in 2023, we moved that portion of the project almost like a second phase to the after season. So the following is an update on what's been completed to date. And there are some attached photos. I do want to point out, though, just so I don't forget later on too, is the only conceptual photo they've ever provided us does show that there's a roof ceiling on the top structure of this tower, and there is not on the option that we purchased, just so you're aware. It's just there was never a conceptual provided to us without the ceiling. All right, and so the screw pilings are installed, the tower is erected, and the underground plumbing is installed to be completed in April. We are planning on having the water slide supplier from Ontario out to install the fiberglass slide portion of the slide, and the concrete walkways will then be done by ourselves on our own outside of the project at that point. So we are meeting tomorrow to see if, because of weather or any type of delay with the tower itself, which we have the buffer of May to play with, that we may even get started on some of the concrete ahead of time, just so we're not right up to the end result. So, and just I wanted to anticipate, or I do provide a budget breakdown. We anticipate that we'll be within that budget. We don't foresee any concern with that. I just also want to point out that the stakeholders' engagement right from day one, the Waves and Blades group, working group that had worked with us for both the arena and the pool, helped steer this, helped choose what slide options there were, and what deck furniture were needed, and things like that. So recommendation is that council accept the water slide update report as information. And if you have any other questions, I'm all yours.
Thank you. I'll open it up to members of council. Councillor Beekman.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to Russ. Just one question about staffing for the water slides. Now, I know if you go to like water parks, usually they always have somebody staffed to attend the top of the water slide, be it that this one's not going into the pool and it's more of a hotel style type slide, which never has anybody attending it. Is there a plan for staff to attend it or kind of a police it, use at your own risk type deal?
No, there is a plan for there to be a water slide attendant at the most busy times. It is a little bit of a gray area, but we plan on dual purposing that tower to not only have a slide attendant, but also allow that to also be an advantage point up on the tower to be able to see the entire complex. So that person to be an active lifeguard as well. You bet.
Any further questions from members of council? Councillor Reese.
Thanks, Mayor Van Rijn. I move that council accept the water slide update as information.
Thank you. Just before I call the question on that, for the ramp that was installed last year, does that need to be relocated or does it stay in the same location?
No, good question to Mayor Jack Van Rijn. Where the ramp is existing, it can stay in that location. In fact, we see a little bit of an opportunity there for people to actually get back out of the pool at the location. Those slides are quite a ways further down.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, there is a motion on the floor by Councillor Reese that council accept the water slide update report as information. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Russ. Moving down the agenda, we completed all the information items. So that'll take care of the open portion. I will be needing a motion that council move into closed session at 6:26 p.m. in accordance with section 197-4-B of the Municipal Government Act to discuss matters exempt from disclosure for items 13.1 subject to section 16 business interests of a third party and section 19 confidential evaluations, section 27 privileged information. Can I get someone to sponsor that motion? Councillor Pickering. Thank you. We will take a 10-minute break. Oh, 1 second. Go ahead. Oh, call question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.